This is Vinyl 4, round 14. Just keep chugging along. Had some really interesting picks last episode. Actually, we took a week off. I was in Vegas. We just couldn't make it work. I wish that we could have, but thanks to everyone for joining back up. But to revisit, we had from the last Vinyl 4 was the OJ's Backstabber, Funkadelic Maggot Brain, Television Marquee Moon, and Neil Young with Crazy Horse. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere. Pretty solid, Craig.
Yeah, no complaints.
Now we move on to another round. This is a really interesting round of picks here, and I go first this week. I'm ready when you are. We can jump right in. I already know what I'm picking for each of these, so
Cool.
fire away.
All right, coming in, your first selection of picks here are Kanye West with Late Registration, and then the Mothers of Invention. We're only in it for the money. The Mothers of Invention, of course, with the amazing Frank Zappa. 118 was Kanye West, and 298 was Mothers of Invention. What do you say?
Yeah, so for me, Kanye West is kind of, when he first came out, I loved him. I thought, man, this guy is so original. I thought what it was called College Dropout. And I loved his sound, loved everything about him. Obviously, over the years, he has been very polarizing. I get to this album and I look at it. I went back and listened to this record and I listened to Mothers of Invention because I was on the fence, honestly. And my heart tells me that I got to go with Frank Zappa, Mothers of Invention, but I can't. I went back and listened to it, Craig. I just don't love it. It's just goofy.
Yeah.
And doesn't all match up. And so if I look at that together, you can't deny the fact is sometimes Kanye, he's got some out there stuff. He's been up and down and everything, but you can't deny his genius. And it's just so hard to pick against him and for Frank Zappa here. So I'm going Kanye West all day.
All right.
Okay. Your choices. Number 277, Parliament, Mothership Connection versus 491, ZZ Top, Tres Hombres. This has got to be tough for you, I think.
Yeah, this is flip a coin moment. That's pretty much what I did. I'm going to go with the rankings, 277 for Parliament, 491 for ZZ Top. I love Tres Hombres. I love that era of ZZ Top. But man, said this before with whether it's Funkadelic, whether it's Parliament, whether it's just George Clinton, there's something about that vibe. It's just so good. Parliament's Mothership Connection is one of their best albums. It's hard to pick because they've got like 3 or 4 that are just all bangers. So I'm going to go Parliament, Mothership Connection.
All right. I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that one. I felt like you were going to be on the fence with that one. That was tough. Yeah.
We'll see where you go with yours. These are pretty close together. You got 336, which is Soundgarden's Super Unknown, versus 266, Ray Charles, the genius of Ray Charles.
Yeah. Soundgarden, man, there was a time when I was so locked in on them in the 90s. They had a sound that I loved. It was heavy, but it was accessible. It was melodic, but it was so different too. We grew up listening to heavy metal, and it had all of the elements of the metal stuff that we loved, but also had something a little different. It always had a Zeppelin-esque feel to it somehow. Then I go Ray Charles, and I'm an old soul in a lot of ways, and Ray Charles represents the kind of music that I love, but I got to go with Soundgarden. I'm leaving that Ray Charles out there for you to pick up in the redemption round. I know how much you love Ray Charles. I don't love enough of individual records for him to pick it over a Soundgarden record that I grew up listening to.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. But a tough choice nonetheless. Okay, speaking of tough choices, or at least very interesting choice here. Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, which came in at, I'm surprised, at 452. Thought it would be in the 300s or something, but versus 51, Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water. This is second week in a row that you've had S&G on your list to pick.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Very tough one. I know it's 452 versus 51, so there's a huge gap in regards to the votes of getting them where they're ranked, but this is a lot closer than I think people think. This Amy Winehouse, you hear people all the time trying to chase to find who's the next Amy Winehouse. You're not going to find it. She's just so unique. I've said before, I like Simon and Garfunkel. I do. And I like their albums too. I just don't love them. I do. I would say, even though Bridge Over Troubled Water probably is one of maybe their second or third best reviewed album, it's probably one of my favorites. I've lived more with that than I have with, the Amy Winehouse. That's the only reason I'm gonna go with it, but it's a very, very close. I think if this was maybe another Simon& and Garfunkel album that I didn't have as much of an attachment to, it's probably the one album from them I truly love. So, and I recognize it might not be better than some of the other albums, but that's the one I like. So I'm gonna go Simon& and Garfunkel. I kinda did that on the fly.
All right. Love it.
Alright, so we got 2 picks here. I mean, literally, I think Sean's gonna have to flip a coin on this one because one artist he does not know and the other one he does not love. Just saying it out loud. 194, Lou Reed's Transformer versus 475, Manu Chao with Proxima Estación Esperanza.
Yeah, I'm gonna surprise you here because one thing that I do love is Lou Reed's Transformer album. It's the only record by him that I like.
Cool.
I've talked about it before, I'm not a big Lou Reed fan. This is a great album. I've had this record for a long time. It's funny because probably 3 of, if not his most well-known songs, they're in the 3 of the top 5 are off of this album, being Walk on the Wild Side, Satellite of Love,
Right.
and Perfect Day, and
Oh, yeah, for
and
sure.
then you have Vicious. It's a great album by him. I listened to New York. I've tried on that album a couple times. Critics love that album. I never could get into it. This album
Right.
to me, though, was Lou Reed just letting it all loose, and I'm I'm not very familiar with Manu Chao. I know he's been around a long time. Critics have really always loved him. I don't know
Yeah.
enough about him to vote against a record that I really love. If this had been Lou Reed versus Neil Young, something or other, Harvest, that'd be a different conversation, but I really do love Lou Reed Transformer,
Yeah.
so I'm going with that.
Color me surprised. I spoke out of turn there. Sorry about that.
Hey, I gotta keep you on your toes. Alright, you are up, and this is I know where you're gonna go, but this is a really interesting matchup. George Michael, Faith at 473
Mhm.
versus number 90, Stevie Wonder, Talking Book.
Well, look, Faith is an incredible album. I probably have more there's several artists that are in this book, by the way, of I appreciate more now, far more now than I did when they were in their pinnacle days, their heyday, per se. I didn't love George Michael back in the day. I liked Wham! Okay, I thought they were fun, and then when he came out and did his solo thing, which is actually a lot better, I just wasn't into it at the time, but given time and then you see everything just listen to a greatest hits. There's a double greatest hits we were listening to on the road a while back. It's remarkable. Guy was just incredible. But Stevie Wonder is one of my favorite all-time artists. I love him. Talking Book is about the point where he really started to get into those pinnacle 4 or 5 albums. It's phenomenal. It's a no-brainer. I gotta go Stevie Wonder Talking Book just because that's a tough album to beat in general. Some of the only albums that will beat that album are his other albums,
Yeah.
so
I agree. There may only even though that record and, of course, we don't pay attention to the rankings, we put it here for reference because of
Right.
the randomness of it. It's ranked 90th, but there aren't a lot of albums ahead of this that I would pick over Talking Book. I mean, there are, of course, Rubber Soul, Pet Sounds, things like that, but man, this it's hard to beat Stevie Wonder from that era, like you said. I knew that's where you were
Incredible.
going, that's where I would have gone too.
All right. I got an interesting selection here. I think I know where you're going to go with it, but let's see. I was totally surprised last time. You have 201, which is Nine Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, and that goes up against 314, Nirvana, MTV Unplugged in New York.
Yeah, the whole unplugged thing, it was so big for a while. Tesla and everyone, Eric Clapton, I think, really popularized it. It got to the
Yep.
point where I was a little bit numb on the whole unplugged thing. And you've got Nine Inch Nails, which they were so massive for a period of time. But I'm going to cut to the chase here. I'm Nirvana all day long on this.
Yeah.
I think it is one of the, if not the best of those albums that were released in terms of unplugged. When you
Hmm.
think about the time frame that happened after they get huge, and then whatever it was a year before his passing, it's just a monumental moment, and I think it was the time when everyone realized, "Oh my gosh, he's not just." I think some people from the outside listened to Nirvana and thought, "Well, they're great, they're loud, and he kind of gets really, yells and screams a little bit." When you listen to that unplugged, you go, "Ooh, these songs stripped down, these are really good songs." And you hear
Yeah.
the original essence of them, and you realize on that to me, I realized for the first time, I didn't know at that point that Kurt Cobain was heavily influenced by the Beatles, but I figured it out when I listened to Unplugged. I thought, "This guy has a very melodic sense." So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm Nirvana all the way on this one.
Yeah, that album is so good. I mean, David Bowie cover, Meat Puppets cover, he really exposed his influences on that, and I think it's bar none. Big Pearl Jam guy, definitely more of a Pearl Jam fan than a Nirvana fan back in the day. There's no comparison between those 2 Unplugged albums, and Nirvana's is just I think it's hands down the best, MTV Unplugged, so
I agree. All right, your last choice here. 111 Radiohead, The Bends versus 356 The Yardbirds, Having a Rave Up.
no contest, Radiohead, The Bends. The Yardbirds are one of those bands that I've got some collections. They're another one of those bands too that didn't really have proper albums, for the most part, that I knew of. I never really saw them growing up. I just always saw collections. You see them on vinyl, you see more collections. Of course, having that Jimmy Page connection, being a big Zeppelin fan, should totally love it. Of course, you had Eric Clapton. I mean, just the lineup is epic, but the music isn't as compelling, and that's the thing that gets me. Radiohead, The Bends changed my world because I just thought the first album, Pablo Honey, was just very disappointed in it, and then all of a sudden, this masterpiece hits us in the face, and I'm just like, this is my new favorite band, and I was so disappointed 2 years ago. So this is it's tough to beat this album. This is like for you with the Soundgarden. I love Super Unknown, love Bad Motorfinger, but this was bigger to me. I could not stop playing the Bends. I had it on CD. It literally got played every shift that we worked when I worked at CD Warehouse at the time. Even when I got to start managing stores, I mean, I played this album relentlessly. And to me, this is where they really started that growth. So all the way Radiohead the Bends.
I can't disagree at all. In fact, I was looking back at this list of the 16. This is Radiohead, The Bends is my favorite of these 16. I'll just say it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
arena rock at its finest for the late 20th century into the 21st century. It doesn't get better
absolutely.
than this, and a lot of bands have tried to sound this good. The Bends is just amazing. And it's funny because they never revisited it, which I actually have respect for. They
Right.
went in a totally different direction and never come back to that. They've touched on it here and there, but they've never really come back to an album quite like The Bends, which also
Nope.
I would love them to do that, but it also makes them even cooler that they haven't.
Yeah, kinda makes the album a little bit more precious, and
Yeah,
you could just tell that they just were constantly about evolution. They evolved very, very quickly,
yeah.
probably as quickly as any other band out there. Um, so, yeah, that album was just the first time I heard it, I get this can't be the same band. This just can't. It's amazing.
Okay, really fast, and we'll move on. Right now, right off the top of your head, what is your favorite song on that record? I'm just curious because mine is it
Ye
a tie? Too many to
I mean, My Iron Lung is amazing, um, but I've always loved how the album ends. I think, um, Street Spirit, Fade Out is just remarkable. I
yeah.
love that. If you listen to the guitar progression too, if you listen to that chord and the picking, it sounds like he's playing Dust in the Wind backwards. It's so cool. I just love the way that album it's tough. I mean, the song the song The Bends itself is amazing. Um, if you want more of a pop essence, I love that song, but I would probably go with Street Spirit.
Okay.
That's probably my favorite. Yeah.
Mine, hands down, is Bulletproof. I wish I was. Oh my gosh.
Bulletproof is definitely a top. I mean, the whole album is masterful, and that Bulletproof is definitely one of my favorite of the more somber songs
It's
for
so
sure.
beautiful.
It is.
It's almost an emotional experience every time. My phone just fell. It's an emotional experience every time I listen to that song. All right. We will recap here on who we got in, who we have out at this point. So I'll go through mine first and then your four, and then I'll read out the eight that are cast offs for the moment. Right now we have in Kanye West, Late Registration. We
Mhm.
have Parliament, Mothership. Oh, wait, well, I'll do mine first. Kanye West, Late Registration, Soundgarden, Super Unknown, Lou Reed, Transformer, and Nirvana, MTV Unplugged in New York. Those are my four. Your
Yep.
four: Parliament, Mothership Connection, Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Stevie Wonder, Talking Book, and Radiohead, The Bends. So that's the eight that are still alive. Here are the eight that are right on the edge, Craig, of falling away for good until we get to the redemption round and see if we could save any of them. Right now, on the outside looking in, Mothers of Invention. We're only in it for the money. ZZ Top, Trace Hombres, Ray Charles, the genius of Ray Charles, Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, Manu Chao, Proxima Estacion Esperanza. Yes, I took Spanish for many, many years, but I pronounce it better than I can speak it fluently. Let's see. We have George Michael, Faith, Nine Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, and finally, the Yardbirds, Having a Rave Up. As we do every week, every round, we have the redemption round for those that haven't listened before. We both get one shot to take one of the cast offs, either that I did myself because I had a rough choice matchup or one of Craig's cast offs. I get to trade it, and then Craig gets to do the same. I went first this week, so I get the first pick. I, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make a trade, and I think I'm gonna surprise you here.
Alright.
You ready for this? I don't. I don't think you're gonna be surprised at what I cast away, which is gonna be Kanye West, Late Registration.
Mhm.
Just don't love it enough to be
Right.
one of the final picks for me. What's gonna surprise you is what I pick. Do you wanna take a guess? Let's have some fun here. What do you think I'm going to pick of the cast-offs, if you had to guess?
Amy Winehouse, Back to Black.
No. I love this because 'cause I'm totally gonna surprise you. I even went back and listened to this record today because I knew you were gonna cast this off. So I went
Yeah.
back and I listened to this and said, "Do I really think this is worthy?" And after the first 4 songs, which all I think were number 1 hits in 1987, and then I
Wow.
listened to the rest of the album, and then at the end, Monkey, and then I realized and I think back and I remember in the late '80s and early '90s, you couldn't even go into a club anywhere, like a dance club, bar, nightclub, without hearing a George Michael song, at least
Yeah.
one every night.
Yep.
George Michael was everywhere. His fashion sense, his look, he was incredible, and to your point earlier, I took for granted when I was younger what an amazing songwriter, but also what an amazing singer. He wrote every song but one. I think he co-wrote one song. He wrote it, he performed, did most of the instruments on this record. I think it had 4 or 5 number 1s on this record.
Wouldn't surprise me, yeah.
Faith is just an incredible record, and it's gotten better
Great record.
the longer it's been out there aging. I love it. It's not an album I listen to every day, but it is a bona fide classic. So I'm going with that. I'm replacing Kanye West and bringing in George Michael. So now I have George Michael, Soundgarden, Lou Reed, and Nirvana. Now
Oof.
over to you.
Well, mine's pretty easy. Um, I'm going to trade Simon and Garfunkel's "Bridge Over Troubled Water" for Ray Charles, "The Genius of Ray Charles."
Of course, I
Just
knew
too
it.
good, just too good of an album. I do think his albums are spectacular. I've got his full Atlantic recordings in mono. It is I mean, it's just phenomenal. It is a sound, and it is an era that it stays consistent. It's not gonna, like, wow you like a Beatles latter it's like the difference between the early Beatles and the latter day Beatles. If you like the early Beatles, it's great, and it's underrated, but they kinda stick in the same thing, just like Ray did. There's something about Ray, man, he just hits my heart, always has, so, this is an easy pick for me. I'm going, Ray Charles.
I absolutely love it. I should love Ray Charles more than I do, and I think it's more I need to dig in deeper because the stuff that came after Ray, some of the stuff that he influenced are my favorites. Marvin
Yeah,
Gaye, Al Green, Aretha Franklin. That stuff
right.
touches me deeply, but I've just never dug in enough on Ray Charles. So I'm glad you picked that. I'm glad he's going to potentially survive. We now have some choices to make. I will go first, and I'm going to narrow down my 4 to 2. So
Okay.
again, real quickly, I have George Michael, Faith. I have Soundgarden, Super Unknown, Lou Reed, Transformer, and Nirvana, MTV Unplugged in New York. And I got to tell you, this exact moment, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to improvise for a quick second. But the first thing we're going to do is, even though I always feel weird calling Soundgarden, just putting Soundgarden and Nirvana in the grunge category, although they both were kind of grunge and they kind of get lumped into it. I'm
Yep.
not going to walk away from this today with 2 grunge albums. I'm just not. And so I'm going to pit them against each other first. Process of elimination here.
Right.
I'm getting rid of Soundgarden, Super Unknown, and for the moment, Nirvana is safe. Now I've got Nirvana, George Michael, and Lou Reed. Man, I'm going to go with Nirvana because it's a legendary record, like you said, the cover versions, the originals that they did. It is best. We talk about this in the business world sometimes, best in class. It's
Right.
best in class of the unplugged records. No other band of that genre, call it grunge, call it whatever you want. No one else could have pulled that off like them. I don't even know that Soundgarden could have been. There was an emotion and an intensity to that recording that felt
Yep.
different. It's just best in class. So I'm going with Nirvana. Now I've got Lou Reed versus George Michael. And I'm actually going with George Michael. I I don't think anyone that knows me, I think everyone would be shocked that I would eventually narrow down all those choices and that George Michael would make it out on the other side, but it's undeniably a classic record. So I'm George Michael and Nirvana.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so I'm going through my list here. Give me a second. So I've got Parliament, Mothership Connection. I have Ray Charles, the genius of Ray Charles. I have Talking Book from Stevie Wonder, and I have Radiohead The Bends.
Whew. You've got 3 there that I think you wanna put in to 2.
I do. I do love Mothership Connection, but I think, as you know, that's the first one to get
Yep.
eliminated. I do love that album. I do. I just think there's some better. I think some of the. I don't know. It's really tough with them. I just don't listen to them as much as the other three. So I'm down to really tough selection here, and it's really between two of them. I like you. I know it's crazy with all these just legendary artists that I'm going with one of the newish artists in Radiohead, but I tell you, The Bends was just a monumental album for me, so that is completely safe.
Good.
It comes down to Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, and I gotta be honest, I'm as much I'm probably as a whole have a more of an emotional connection to Ray Charles just because of how early I got into him, but we're comparing what I would say is a 4.5 star album in The Genius of Ray Charles to a 5 star album in Stevie Wonder's Talking Book. Talking Book is just magna. And the stuff that I'm getting into it when it comes to soul now more leans towards his experimentation. He just was different, man. It's going to be really tough to narrow down his albums if they get pitted against each other. It's gonna be
Oh, yeah.
really hard because Intervisions and Songs of the Key of Life and oh gosh, just it's giving me a headache. So anyway, Stevie Wonder Talking Book and Radiohead The Bends. That's my two.
I love that. I'm so happy you did that. I knew that that was gonna be I could have predicted most of that. I didn't. I knew Radiohead would make it all the way through for you. I wasn't sure. I knew you were gonna pick up Ray Charles because I knew was going to set it aside. I
Yep.
could have gotten everything down to the point where you had to make a decision between Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder, and I really didn't know
Right.
where you would go. I kept thinking you might go with your heart. Ray Charles is in your heart, but the
Yeah.
the the body of work, the overall catalog, not that we're doing this here, it's album by album, but man, you're right. In that 70s era, voting against Stevie Wonder all the way down the line when we keep going deeper, it's gonna be hard to vote
Yeah.
against Stevie Wonder's albums of that era.
Yeah. You almost have to, as much as it's painful for that moment, it's almost better that they do go head to head. So it
Mhm.
makes it easier for you to eliminate one. Because if you put Intervisions against Rubber Soul, it's like, oh man, like that's literally to me flip a coin. They're
Yeah.
both so good. Yeah, and it is an emotional thing too. I for some people they might think, really, Radiohead? I know they're a great band, but are you going to put them? I'm telling you, when this came out, and Sean can attest, and talk to other people, talk to Kevin. Kevin's the same way on our other podcast. He said the same thing. He goes, that album's just special. So yeah,
It's so good. It's one of the best rock albums that of the last 30 years. Really. I mean, just pure rock and roll. It is
yep.
unbelievable. All right, we'll wrap up here. So I will do a quick recap of the Vinyl 4 for this week, which is for me, Nirvana, MTV Unplugged in New York. And then my surprise, I'm still surprised myself, honestly. George Michael Faith. And then you have for your two, Stevie Wonder, Talking Book, and Radiohead The Bend. So Radiohead, Stevie Wonder, George Michael, Nirvana. Not bad.
That's a solid lineup right there.
That's
That's
a
a concert. I'd go see that concert.
absolutely. That'd be a good festival right there. Okay, real quickly, and then we'll sign off here. I'm going to do what I have been doing lately, which is going through next week's round 15. Dude, it doesn't get any easier, does it? Here are the matchups. Here are yours. You go first next week. You have My Bloody Valentine Loveless versus Little Richard. Here's Little Richard.
Oof.
Yeah. Then you have Bob Dylan, The Free Will and Bob Dylan versus Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's the Way of the World. Then you go Madonna, Ray of Light versus Otis Redding, Otis Blue. And then finally, you're back with the Yardbirds again. The Yardbirds, Roger the Engineer versus Echo and the Bunnymen. Heaven up here. I'm laughing because, well, I'm just laughing.
Yeah.
There's some torture there for you, but I think I know what you're going to go with. Okay. I have my matchup Sleater Kenny, Dig Me Out versus The Who, a quick one. The Clash, Sandinista the triple album, not even the double, the triple. So the Clash Sandinista versus the Eagles, self-titled Eagles. Then I get the Replacements Let It Be versus PJ Harvey Rid of Me. I already know where I'm going with that. You know where I'm going with that. And then finally, LCD Sound System Sound of Silver versus Bob Marley and the Wailers Natty Dread. Oh my gosh. This I'll just go ahead and say I like these matchups. This may be one of my favorites yet. There's some
Yeah,
great.
there's some good ones in this next one for sure.
I have to go back and do some homework. I gotta because there's a couple I'm already looking at here going, I really don't know where I'm going. And there's one of these, and I won't say which one, but there's one I need to go listen to this other record before I just cast it aside, even though I think I know where I'm going with my pick. I still got to
Right.
give it a chance, stay true to myself here. But there's one of my four matchups that, oh my gosh, I got to go back and listen to both records all the way through to make sure I make the right choice.
Yep.
All right. Well, another great round. Thank you all so much. We will be back next week with round 15. And until then, go enjoy some good classic records. Thanks, everyone.